If I'd sold the damn mugs myself at the summer market like I'd planned, none of this would have happened. Or maybe it would have. Maybe the crack was already there, waiting for wait. Greg said, "Let me handle the business side. You focus on the art." I believed him because he was my husband, because we'd been married 19 years, and because the tremor in his left hand had already taken his cello. I thought, what else could he possibly need from me? So I let him photograph my work, pack it, drive boxes to buyers, talk to hotel people who used phrases like guest experience without irony. I even felt guilty for resenting his help. That was February. In May, a woman from the Whitford hotel called our landline to thank Greg Carpenter for the new shipment. I hadn't loaded a kiln for Greg in 3 months. The message came through while I was in the studio behind our house, trimming foot rings on bowls still too soft because fog does insulting things to clay. The answering machine in the kitchen clicked on loud enough for me to hear through the mudroom door.
Hi, Mr. Carpenter. This is Elena Ruiz from Whitford Hospitality. Just calling to say the Portland property received the latest shipment this morning, and the team is thrilled. The mugs are even lovelier in person. We're especially excited about the driftwood glaze for the autumn rooms package. Please let me know when you're ready to discuss December quantities. I froze with a loop tool in my hand. There are ordinary lies, and then there are lies that use your vocabulary. Driftwood was mine. Not legally registered, not stamped by some office, but mine in the way a thing becomes yours after it has ruined your sleep for half a year. I had tested 37 variations before the glaze broke gray at the rim and warm beige over the belly, with rutile flecks like salt and weathered wood. My notebook had pages of failures. Too green, crawled at cone 6, pinholes near handle, more ash, less whiting, cried in car after opening kiln. Greg knew that. He had kissed the back of my neck the day I opened the kiln and found the first mug that looked right. He'd said, "There she is," like we had delivered a baby. I went inside and played the message again. Latest shipment, Mr. Carpenter, driftwood glaze, December quantities. The first thing I felt wasn't anger. It was embarrassment. Hot, childish embarrassment, as if someone had caught me being naive. Then came the marital reflex, the one that tries to protect the shape of your life before it protects the truth. Maybe she meant something else. Maybe Greg had arranged a consignment and forgotten to mention it. Maybe Mr. Carpenter was just how hotels addressed households. Maybe the shipment was delayed from February. A person can build a chapel out of maybes if she's desperate enough to worship there. I searched Whitford hospitality mugs, driftwood, Carpenter. Under Meet Our Artisans, I found him. Greg Carpenter, ceramic artist. After a celebrated career as a cellist, Greg Carpenter turned to clay as a more tactile form of composition. His exclusive driftwood glazed mugs for Whitford hospitality evoke the weathered shorelines and quiet resilience of Maine craft. Quiet resilience. I almost laughed. If I hadn't, I might have put the laptop through the window. Beside the paragraph was a photograph of hands holding one of my mugs. The mug was unmistakable. It had a small iron bloom near the foot where the ash had pooled in a teardrop shape. I remembered it because I had nearly kept it. I'd set it on the top shelf of the white cabinet labeled Summer Market A grade and told myself not to get attached. The hands looked like Greg's at first. Long fingers, sparse dark hair, a blue vein raised along the back of the left hand. But the thumb was wrong. Greg's left thumb had a crescent scar near the tip from a bandsaw accident during our first year in the house. I changed the dressings for 3 weeks. The thumb in the Whitford photograph was smooth. Not Greg's hands. That wrong detail steadied me. Until then, I'd been inside a fog of hurt. The missing scar gave me an edge. I did not confront him. People later asked why. Why didn't you march upstairs? Why didn't you play the message and watch his face? I told myself why.
I knew why. I didn't want to know. Because I had lived with Greg Carpenter for 19 years, and I knew two things. First, he could make sorrow so large, everyone else's pain had to wait outside. Second, if he felt cornered, he became vague in a way that made you doubt furniture. He would say there had been conversations, misunderstandings, opportunities, household income, our brand. He would say he thought I knew. He would turn the room into wet clay and press his fingerprints into it. So I washed my hands, put on a clean shirt, and called Whitford, Portland. Whitford, Portland, this is Mara. How may I direct your call? My own name is Nora, so that felt unnecessarily personal. Hi, I said, using my craft fair voice. I'm trying to reach someone in marketing about your artisan partnerships. 2 transfers later, Elena came on. This is Elena. Elena, hi. My name is Claire Bexley. I'm putting together a small piece on regional hospitality and local makers. Your artisan program came up. I saw the Greg Carpenter feature. It's beautiful. I wondered if you had a press image of the mug I could use? A pause, just long enough for my heart to try leaving through my throat. Oh, of course, she said. We love Greg's work. Are you on deadline? End of week. 11 minutes later, the JPEG arrived with a few lines from their sourcing statement. I saved it in a desktop folder called Tax Receipts 2022, because if Greg glanced at my computer, nothing made his eyes slide away faster than taxes. The image showed my mug clearly. The iron bloom, the lip, the handle curve, the proportions I could feel in my wrists. The stamp on the bottom was hidden by the hands, which made my stomach tighten. But Whitford had voluntarily sent a promotional image attached to the claim that Greg was the artisan. That changed the thing from private marital confusion to public misattribution. My next receipt was in the studio. On the shelf above my glaze buckets were my notebooks. I pulled down the gray one with the cracked spine. Driftwood tests, I had written on the front in black marker, before spilling coffee over the D. Inside were months of notes: base recipe, specific gravity, sieve mesh, firing schedule, cone packs, slow cool tests. Taped to one page was a receipt from Harbor Clay Supply for rutile, wood ash, and EPK kaolin, dated September 14. In the margin beside test 29, I had written, G says too quiet? Ignore G. I sat down on the stool. G says too quiet. Greg had opinions. When he played cello, his opinions were part of his charm. He could explain why a phrase needed to lean into grief instead of announce it. After the tremor, when performance slipped away from him inch by inch, he brought that listening into my studio. At first, I welcomed it. Then his comments changed. Our palette. Our summer line. We should avoid anything too whimsical. I laughed it off because marriage turns warning bells into background music if they ring long enough. I photographed the notebook pages, then stopped. Photographs could be dismissed as recent. The physical notebooks mattered. Dates, smudges, receipts, the progressive mess of development. I put them in a clean plastic bin and labeled it Glaze Records. That afternoon, Greg came home with groceries. He was 61 then, 10 years older than me, though on good days he looked ageless in the annoying way of lean men with dramatic cheekbones. He wore a linen shirt with the sleeves rolled, because even buying onions was apparently an occasion for looking like a composer in exile. Fog's lifting, he said. Is it? Supposed to be nice tomorrow. I watched him unpack oat milk, eggs, and parsley we did not need. His left hand trembled as he set down the carton. Not badly. Enough. He kissed my temple. I let him. There are betrayals where the body knows before the mind and flinches. Mine didn't. My body had loved him too long. It accepted the kiss like signing for a package I hadn't ordered. Any calls? He asked. I could have said it then. Your mother. She wants you to call about her printer. He groaned with ordinary tenderness, and for 5 seconds, I almost forgave him. That night, while Greg read in bed, I opened Instagram under the blanket like a teenager. I scrolled through months of studio scraps, reclaim buckets, my neighbor's orange cat asleep and packing peanuts, a shelf of bowls under plastic. Then I found the kiln unloading. 32 seconds. March 16. In the video, I am wearing my green bandana and denim apron. My face is shiny with heat. I lift the kiln lid and whisper, "Come on, come on." The camera wobbles. Then the top shelf comes into view. There it is. The Whitford mug. The iron bloom near the foot. The gray-white rim. I make a soft little hum in the video, almost a song. Not content, not performance, just the private noise of a craftsperson seeing the work answer back. Greg shifted beside me. "You okay?" I locked the phone so fast I pinched my thumb. "Yeah, checking the weather." The story archive mattered because it showed me unloading that specific mug before any Whitford launch. But a screen recording alone wouldn't be enough. People can fake captions. I needed something that didn't depend on trust. At 1:17 a.m., I went downstairs and searched how to download Instagram data timestamped story archive. The self-service tool was buried but real. I requested my March data in JSON format with media. A confirmation email arrived at 1:29 a.m. That was my first real breath of the day. The next morning, Greg made pancakes, which he did when he wanted the house to feel like a house instead of two freelancers avoiding quarterly taxes. After breakfast, he asked, "Do you need me to take anything to the storage unit?" "We have a storage unit?" He looked up from rinsing the skillet. "The little one by Route 1, for packing materials. I told you." Maybe he had. Maybe he hadn't. That was the problem with Greg's vagueness. It nested inside normal forgetfulness. When he left, I opened our filing drawer. I did not open his mail. I did not guess passwords. I stayed with what was mine, public, or voluntarily provided, because I could already hear him later. "You invaded my privacy. You went looking. You misunderstood." In the drawer was the lease for the Route 1 storage unit, signed by Greg in February, paid monthly from an account ending in 8842. I did not recognize the account. I photographed the lease and put it back. That account did not become evidence. I couldn't access it lawfully, and I wasn't building a bridge out of something I couldn't stand on. But it changed my belief. This wasn't a one-time shipment. It was infrastructure. On Friday, my Instagram download was ready. Inside the zip file, in Stories, I found the March video and a JSON file with a creation timestamp. 2022-03-16, T194208 plus 0000. I am not technical. I can center 5 pounds of clay while discussing someone's divorce, but JSON makes me feel like a raccoon trying to read a mortgage. Still, the timestamp was plain. I printed it, saved the video to a flash drive, and emailed copies to myself. Next, I needed Whitford's timeline. I called Elena again. "Claire," she said, pleased. "Did the image work?" "Beautifully. I'm just fact-checking. Do you know when the partnership with Greg launched?" "Oh, let me see. First order was for Portland in early April. Bar Harbor added the mugs in June. The web feature went up April 8th, I think." "Great. We're hoping to expand the line into bowls." Bowls. The word landed like a hand on the back of my neck. My bowls were drying under plastic in the studio, their rims still vulnerable. "Lovely," I said. "Thank you." That evening, I moved the finished bowls into the locked cabinet where I kept expensive stains and luster. Greg noticed. "Running out of space?" "Just reorganizing." He leaned in the doorway. "You've been quiet." "Have I?" "Nora." He said my name softly, and for a moment I saw the man in the neurologist's office again, staring at his left hand as if it belonged to someone who had betrayed him first. I had loved him through that. I had driven him to appointments, sat in practice rooms while he tried modified fingerings, watched him sell his cello to a collector in Boston because he said instruments should be played, not mourned. When the buyer carried it away, Greg stood in the driveway with his hands in his pockets. I thought grief would either hollow him out or teach him gentleness. It did both. Then something else. "I'm tired," I said. "Don't overdo the market in." That was the first mercy anyone gave me. "You need people with distance," Janine said. "Lyle and Professor Avila." Lyle was the kiln repair technician who had kept Agatha alive through 2 relay failures, 1 thermocouple tantrum, and a lid hinge incident we no longer discussed. Agatha was my Scut KM1027, old enough to have moods. Lyle had seen the driftwood tests taped to my studio wall for months. Professor Elena Avila had taught the ash glaze masterclass where I first learned to stop fighting ash like it was a misbehaving child. Lyle came on Wednesday. I told Greg the kiln was misfiring, which was never entirely false. Greg offered to stay and translate Lyle, as if I hadn't been speaking kiln for longer than he had been speaking clay. I said I had it handled. After replacing a relay, Lyle accepted iced tea. I showed him the Whitford page. He read it with the skeptical squint of a man reviewing a warranty claim. "That's your glaze," he said. "Can you put that in writing?" He looked at me then. What did he do? I think he sold my mugs as his. Lyle set the glass down carefully. "I'm sorry." The simplicity nearly undid me. I asked for a factual statement, how long he had serviced my kiln, that he had observed my driftwood tests over the previous year, that he had seen similar work unloaded from this kiln. No embellishment. "I'll have my wife notarize it," he said. "She's a notary at the bank." You don't have to. I know what I have to do. Lyle had played poker with Greg. They talked Red Sox, bad backs, and old strings. He could have stepped into neutrality, that soft local fog. He didn't. Professor Avila replied 2 days after I emailed her. "Nora, I can verify your participation in the 2021 Ash Glaze Masterclass and that you presented early driftwood tests in critique. I cannot speak to marital or commercial claims I did not witness. If a factual statement would help, I will provide one." It helped precisely because it was cold. Her letter came on college letterhead. She described my test tiles, formula adjustments, critique notes, and the distinctive result. She did not mention Greg once. I loved her for it. By then, my evidence had become a box. Whitford website printout, marketing JPEG, Elena's email, Instagram archive timestamp, flash drive with the video, glaze notebooks, supply receipts, Lyle's notarized statement, Professor Avila's letter. Each piece changed something. The JPEG proved public claim. The video proved my hands and the mug before the sale. The timestamp made the video harder to dismiss. The notebooks proved development over time. The witnesses proved I hadn't invented a glaze history after seeing a hotel website. What I still didn't understand was why. Money was obvious, but not enough. We weren't rich, but we weren't desperate. We had a mortgage that creaked, health insurance that insulted us monthly, and a studio roof that needed replacing. But the Whitford orders would not make a fortune once you counted materials, firing, time, and the moral cost of looking your wife in the eye over pancakes. The answer arrived because Greg forgot a tote bag. It was canvas from the North Atlantic Artists Collective, hanging on the back of his chair. Greg had been a member for years as a musician, then as an interdisciplinary artist after the tremor. The collective owned a converted cannery building with galleries, rehearsal rooms, studios, and a kitchen full of unlabeled jars fermenting with ambition. Membership mattered in our town. It meant residencies, teaching gigs, panels where people used practice as both noun and religion. I had applied once and been waitlisted. Greg said the ceramics committee was political. I accepted that, because rejection is easier when someone you love narrates it as injustice. The tote had tipped over. Papers spilled out. I bent to gather them and saw a letter on top. Dear Greg, as part of our annual membership review, all studio and associate members are required to submit documentation of original work produced and sold within the calendar year. Failure to demonstrate active artistic output may result in probationary status or membership suspension. Below, in Greg's handwriting, was a note. Whitford invoices, web feature, photos, December expansion. I sat on the floor with the letter in my lap. Not money. Not only money. Status. Membership. A room in the cannery where people still called him maestro and asked what he was working on. Proof that he had not become merely the husband of a potter. Proof that his hands still made something the world wanted, even if they didn't. I wanted that realization to make me softer. It did, for about 30 seconds. Then I remembered my bowls locked in a cabinet, the separate account, and Greg Carpenter, ceramic artist. Pain may explain theft. It does not convert it into borrowing. I photographed the letter, but decided not to use it in the formal packet. It was in our kitchen, in plain view, but it felt too close to his private membership process, and I didn't need it. More importantly, I wanted the cleanest version of the truth. That night, I asked him. Whitford called the kitchen windows. Greg was cleaning his glasses with the hem of his shirt, which I had told him for 19 years did not clean glasses so much as rearrange grease. Whitford called, I said. His hand stopped. When? Last week. He put on the glasses. One lens had a smear across it. What did they say? They thanked you for the latest shipment of my mugs. There is a particular silence after a sentence like that. Not empty. Crowded. Greg looked toward the mudroom, then back at me. Nora, don't start with my name. I was going to tell you. No, you weren't. It got away from me. Did it drive itself to Portland? He flinched, and I felt mean, then angry that I felt mean. They needed a consistent point of contact, he said. You hate dealing with buyers. I hate chasing invoices. I do not hate knowing who buys my work. It was our work, in a way. No. I helped shape the line. I photographed it. I packed it. I built the relationship. You told them you made it. He looked down. Did you tell them you made it? They assumed. Greg. Yes, he said. Eventually, yes. The room did not tilt. Receipts have a way of bracing the floor. Why? He gave a short, humorless laugh. You know why. I want to hear you say it. His face changed. The charm drained out, leaving exhaustion. Because I'm disappearing, he said. Because every room I walk into, people ask if I'm still playing, and then they do that face when they remember. Because the collective review was coming and I had nothing. Do you understand what nothing feels like after 35 years of being someone? Yes, I said. I do. No, you don't. You have the studio. You have Agatha. You have people waiting at your booth before the market opens. You have a future that still comes out of your hands. And so you took it. He pressed his palms together to still the tremor. I borrowed a shape. I almost smiled. That is the most Greg Carpenter sentence ever spoken. I didn't mean for it to go this far. How far was acceptable? He had no answer. I asked about the separate account. He looked startled, then embarrassed. It was easier for bookkeeping. Try again. I didn't want you to see before I figured out how to explain. Explain that you sold my work as yours? Explain that I needed something, he snapped. Then he closed his eyes. I'm sorry. I am. I know I hurt you. No, I said. You don't know yet. I went to the counter. My evidence box was there, covered with a dish towel. I did not show him everything. I pulled out the Whitford printout and the Instagram timestamp. I have proof. I'm going to ask Whitford to reattribute every piece publicly. I'm going to ask them to audit payments made to you for work you represented as yours. And I'm going to copy the collective, because you used my mugs to satisfy their original work requirement. The color left his face. Nora, don't. Don't what? Don't humiliate me. There it was, the small, hard stone at the center of the fruit. You humiliated me, I said. You just did it in rooms I wasn't invited into. He stood too quickly, chair scraping. This will end us. I wished he had said anything else. I wished he had said, I'll call them myself. I'll withdraw from the collective. I'll repay you. I'll tell the truth before you have to. Instead, he identified the consequence as the crime. I think you ended us, I said. I'm just putting a date on it. The registered letters went out the following Tuesday. I had spent the weekend drafting them with the care I usually reserve for handles. Too much pressure and the whole thing warps. Too little and it falls off. I did not accuse Whitford of malice. I stated facts. I am the creator of the ceramic mugs marketed under Greg Carpenter's name. The attached materials establish authorship and production timeline. The driftwood glaze was developed by me and documented in my studio notebooks and by third-party witnesses. The archived Instagram story video, with platform metadata, shows me unloading the specific mug featured in your promotional material on March 16, prior to the April launch. I requested correction of the website and printed materials, written notice to properties carrying the mugs, payment accounting for all purchases made under Greg's representation, preservation of communications and purchase records, and no further orders without direct agreement with me. I copied the director of the North Atlantic Artists Collective and marked that copy separately, relevant to annual membership review materials submitted by Greg Carpenter. At the post office, the clerk weighed the envelopes. Certified or registered? Registered. She looked over her glasses. Important? I thought of my mug held by the wrong hands. Yes. The letters cost $38.75, which felt appropriate. Justice is rarely free. Sometimes it comes with a little green receipt you put in your wallet like a talisman. Whitford responded first. Legal, not Elena. Dear Miss Carpenter, thank you for bringing this matter to our attention. We take claims of artist attribution seriously. We have temporarily removed the artisan feature pending review. Temporarily removed was not victory, but it was movement. Elena called 2 days later. Her voice was smaller than before. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't know. I know. He told us you were his studio assistant, or at first he said family studio, and then... She stopped. I should have asked for a contract with the maker clearly listed. We were moving fast. That's not an excuse. It would have been satisfying if she'd been defensive. Instead, she sounded like a competent woman realizing her efficiency had made her careless. What happens now? I asked. We're correcting the website. We can send notices to properties. Accounting is pulling payment records. If you're willing, we'd like to discuss purchasing directly from you, but I understand if that's not something you want. I looked out at the studio. The roofline sagged slightly where winter had been unkind. Inside, bowls dried behind a locked cabinet because of my husband. I don't know what I want, I said. That's fair. The corrected Whitford page went live the next week. Nora Carpenter, ceramic artist. They used a new photograph, one I took myself, my hands holding a driftwood mug,
clay still under one thumbnail because I refused to make my hands pretend they were decorative. The text was shorter. Developed through extensive ash glaze testing in her main studio, made by hand in small batches. No quiet resilience. Thank God. The hotel posted a correction on social media. Comments bloomed like mold. Beautiful work, Nora. So glad they fixed this. Wait, wasn't this Greg's line? Love both of you. Hope everything is okay. Small towns do not receive public correction as information. They receive it as weather. The collective took longer and cut deeper. Their director, Maeve, asked to meet me at a coffee shop halfway between town and the cannery, which meant everyone in both places could speculate equally. She was in her 70s, with blunt silver hair and the posture of someone who had chaired too many committees to be impressed by pain. "I'm sorry," she said, on behalf of the collective. I was tired of apologies by then, which is ungracious to say about something people owed me. Thank you. We've initiated an ethics review. Greg submitted the Whitford partnership as evidence of original ceramic work. He included sales summaries and the web feature. Based on your documentation, the board has voted to suspend his membership pending full review. What does full review mean? Financial records, communications, any other work claimed. We've requested cooperation. If he refuses, suspension becomes expulsion. And if he cooperates? Likely expulsion anyway, she said. But process matters. There was no triumph in it, only a door closing somewhere down a hall. Maeve opened a folder. There is another matter. Your application from 3 years ago. I stared at her. I reviewed the ceramics committee notes. You were not waitlisted because of politics. You were waitlisted because Greg, who was serving as an interdisciplinary advisor that year, raised concerns about admitting spouses into overlapping membership categories. Conflict of interest, he called it. The committee deferred. For a moment, I could not hear the coffee shop. He told me the ceramics committee didn't understand functional work, I said. Maeve's mouth tightened. They understood it. That was the receipt I had not asked for and did not want. It wasn't necessary for Whitford. It wasn't needed for reattribution. But it changed the scale of the thing in my heart. Greg had not only stolen a future from my shelf, he had stood quietly in front of a door and told me the room behind it didn't want me. Maeve slid a paper across the table. If you choose to reapply, the collective will waive the fee and offer an expedited review. I understand if you want nothing to do with us. Pride said refuse. Practicality said Northlight is Northlight. I'll think about it, I said. Greg moved out before the review ended. No smashed plates, no midnight shouting. He rented a 1-bedroom over a chiropractor's office in Rockland and took his books, clothes, 2 chairs, the record player, and the lobster clock I hated. He asked to take 1 driftwood mug. No, I said. He nodded as if I had been cruel but within my rights, which may have been true. The divorce filing came later, after lawyers and inventories and the strange humiliation of assigning value to a marriage in columns. Studio attached to marital home, disputed. Kiln, premarital business asset, mostly mine, partly complicated by shared funds for electrical upgrade. Whitford payments, subject to accounting. Separate account, disclosed under counsel. The total was less than my imagination had made it. Enough to matter, not enough to explain. He had spent some on collective dues, photography, storage, and 1 expensive jacket I'd complimented in May. I thought it was from the consignment shop, I told him during mediation. It was on sale, he said weakly. Our mediator, a woman with calm earrings, wrote something down. I hope it was jacket, morally ugly. The collective expelled him in November. The letter was private, but nothing stays private long in a town where the same 12 people serve on every board.
He lost studio access, teaching referrals, and the December salon slot he had been clinging to, though he no longer performed. Some people thought the punishment too harsh. Some thought it not harsh enough. Most wanted to discuss it while buying bread. I became poor Nora for a while, which I disliked nearly as much as being robbed. Then I became Nora who did the Whitford line, which was better, but still had Greg's shadow attached. At the winter market, a woman picked up a mug and said, "So these are the famous ones." "They hold coffee, too," I said. She laughed and bought 2. Whitford placed a direct order, smaller than before because I insisted on quantities I could make without turning my wrists into kindling. The contract named me as maker. Payment came to my business account. They offered to use my married name, Carpenter, for continuity. I said no. I had been born Nora Vale, and by spring my stamp was changing too, a small pressed crescent with a line through it, like a moon over water. The cost was not cinematic. It was logistical, social, daily. We sold the house because neither of us could buy the other out cleanly, and because every corner had become evidence. The kitchen where I heard the voicemail, the table where he said borrowed a shape, the cabinet I learned to lock. Agatha came with me, thank every practical god, though moving a kiln is less like moving equipment and more like relocating a stubborn ant with fire insurance. I rented space in an old bait warehouse behind Janine's frame shop. It smelled faintly of salt and cardboard no matter what I did. The floor slanted. In winter, I wore fingerless gloves until the kiln warmed the room. Janine gave me the back parking spot and pretended not to notice when I cried in my car after signing the lease. Lyle rewired the outlet at a discount and refused to call it a discount. "It's the rate for people who don't lie about who made mugs," he said. Professor Avila visited once, looked around, and said, "Good light," which from her was a blessing. Maeve sent the expedited collective application in January. I let it sit on my desk for 3 weeks. Then I filled it out. Not because membership would fix anything. Rooms do not heal you just by letting you in. I applied because Greg had used my absence as material, and I was tired of being useful to him even in negative space. I was accepted in March. At the welcome gathering, half the room hugged me too hard, and the other half treated me like a legal precedent. Maeve handed me a key to the shared glaze lab and said, "You belong here." I wanted that sentence to land cleanly. Instead, it snagged on the memory of Greg's hands on a cello, Greg's hands on my shoulders, Greg's hands trembling over the kitchen table. Belonging and grief arrived together and refused separate chairs. I saw him once after the divorce was final, outside the post office. Of course it was the post office. He looked thinner. His left hand shook more than I remembered, or maybe he no longer bothered to hide it. We stood near the bulletin board, advertising fiddle lessons, firewood, and a missing tabby named Soup. "I saw the Whitford correction," he said. "It's been up for months." "I know." He looked at me then, and for the first time in a long while, he did not seem to be arranging himself for sympathy. "I'm sorry I blocked your application." Maeve must have told him she told me, or guilt finally found that shelf on its own. "That hurt more than the mugs," I said. He nodded. "I know." "No," I said, gently. "You don't." His eyes filled. Mine did not, which felt like both progress and damage. "I'm trying to figure out who I am now," he said. I almost said, "Try using your own hands." I didn't. Not because he didn't deserve it, but because I didn't want to carry the sound of myself saying it. "I hope you do," I said. Then I went inside and mailed a mug to a customer in Vermont. People like clean endings. They want to know if I'm happier. They want to know if revenge felt good. Revenge is too hot a word for what I did. I did not burn his life down. I put the right labels on things, and then the structures he had lied to did what their own rules required. Whitford corrected attribution because their brand depended on authenticity. The collective expelled him because membership required original work and honest documentation. The divorce court divided assets because marriage is also, painfully, a legal arrangement. I did not have to become powerful. I had to become precise. Precision cost me plenty. I still sometimes reach for the second mug in the morning. I still hear a cello in certain low foghorn notes from the harbor and have to sit down. I still hate the phrase business side. I still have days when I miss him so sharply I get angry all over again, because missing someone who hurt you feels like your own body forging a signature. But the work changed after. Not instantly. For months, every mug came off the wheel either too heavy or too careful. Fear makes ugly handles. I kept trying to prove my hand inside each piece, which is a terrible way to make anything. A pot can't spend its whole life testifying.
Eventually, boredom saved me. One rainy morning, I got sick of being meaningful and threw a dozen small cups just to use up a bag of clay that had gone stiff at the corners. They were loose, a little cocky. One had a rim that leaned like it knew gossip. I kept that one. The driftwood glaze kept selling, though I retired the exact hotel shape. I couldn't look at it without seeing the wrong hands. I developed a new version with more ash and a slower cool, darker at the break, less polite. Professor Avila said it had useful bitterness. Janine said it looked like low tide after a fight. Lyle said, "Yep, still a mug," which I put on a sticky note above my wheel. Months later, on a quiet Saturday morning, I opened my Instagram archive again. I hadn't meant to. I was looking for an old trimming video to send a student. And there it was. March 16, the kiln unloading story. For a long time, that thumbnail had felt like a crime scene. My green bandana, Agatha's open mouth, the mug appearing in heat shimmer, the receipt that split my life into before and after. I tapped it. 32 seconds. In the video, I am sweat-soaked and grinning. The camera wobbles. Light catches the rutile flecks. The mug sits there, perfect and unaware of what it will be asked to prove. Then I hear it. My own soft hum of satisfaction. I had forgotten that part, or buried it under everything the video became. It wasn't a song, exactly. More like a note escaping before language could catch it. For the first time, I didn't hear betrayal in it. I heard myself before betrayal arrived. I heard a woman alone in her studio, pleased by her own work. On the shelf beside me sat an unglazed test mug from that same firing cycle, one I'd kept because the handle was slightly odd and because not everything has to be sold to justify existing. It was bare porcelain, sanded smooth, with my old crescent stamp on the bottom. No driftwood, no hotel, no wrong hands. I poured coffee into it and stood by the warehouse window while gulls bleed each other over the dumpsters. The mug warmed my palms. Outside, the tide was coming in, covering the mudflats plank by plank, as if the harbor were correcting itself without apology. If I'd sold the damn mugs myself at the summer market, maybe none of it would have happened. Or maybe some other crack would have opened later, in some other object, under some other polite lie. I don't know. Clay remembers pressure, but it also remembers release. I drank my coffee from the unglazed test mug, from the future I didn't know I was firing. And for once, I let the hum stay mine.